Hi, my name's Paul Lacaze. I'm the head of Public Health Genomics at the School of Public Health and Preventive Medicine, and I do research into human genetics. Genomics is a new and emerging area that's driven a lot by technology, and there's a huge amount of promise about what it might be able to do for the future of medicine. However, there's still a strong need for us to generate more evidence of the utility for genomics, particularly in the context of expanding it broader than what it has traditionally been, which has traditionally been focused in the clinical realm. So expanding it to the kind of population level brings up a whole new range of challenges and problems, and also requires a different type of evidence generation and implementation science. So these are some of the things that we're really testing, and one of the ways we're doing that is through large cohort studies where we have an established controlled population of individuals where we have a huge amount of data collected about them, the ESPRI study, for example. And then we can introduce genetic measurements as part of the overall picture to assess the addition of genetic information and how that might improve in a medical context, how we can manage certain diseases in adults. Genomics is a kind of big data science area, so there are huge analytical challenges and computational challenges with dealing with huge amounts of DNA sequence information and integrating that with medical record information, or what we call phenotype data, which is measurements of the external manifestations of people in relation to their genes. However, there are also a whole other series of challenges that are more related to ethics and social issues that are kind of connected to the broader implementation challenges of genomics. So these include things like, what do people actually want to know from their genome? What are the broader ramifications of being told something about your genes, whether they be familial implications or implications for legal issues or even things like insurance? So there are a whole lot of things that we need to think about before we can start implementing genetic information broadly into our society. And things are moving extremely quickly at the moment, and people have a natural fascination towards finding out about their genes. However, there's a whole lot of checks and balances that we need to put in place along the way in order to successfully implement and scale up genetics into our society. So I find that a very important part of research that needs to be done around things like, how do you consent someone to provide a sample for research into genetics? How do you feed back information from the genome to people responsibly? How do you provide genetic counselling to people who might need to interpret and compress the information about their genes which you're telling them, which can sometimes be of quite high gravity, so there can be disease susceptibilities to things like cancer or Alzheimer's disease. And then there are implications for the family members of that individual as well, which have to be taken into account. So these are all things that also require evidence and kind of alignment with our medical system as we plan for the future of implementing genetics more broadly into medicine. We have a lot of resources here at SPHPM, like clinical registries, large cohort studies, and biobanks, which we can now do huge scale genomic studies in and combine that information, those genetic measures with very rich medical and phenotypic information that we have accompanying these populations. And that's a really, really critical part of genomics. So the technology's advanced rapidly, and there's been very big genetic studies, but most of them are lacking what we call deep phenotypic information. So very high, fine-grained information about every single person that we take a genetic measurement in, so we can really interpret what that genetic variation means in the context of their life and try and figure out what the contribution of our genes are in combination with the environment in defining some of these disease phenotypes. And so really this requires larger and larger studies, and critically these studies have to have a well-developed biobank connected to them so that samples can be collected and processed in very high quality to prepare them for future genetic and other biomarker measures. And that's exactly what's happened with the ESPRI study. So we have almost 15,000 samples collected from Australians who have enrolled in Esprit who are over the age of 70. So these are predominantly healthy elderly individuals. We've been tracking their health for an average of 5 years, and we're now in the process of taking genetic sequencing measurements from all of these samples, which we can then interpret in the context of this rich medical information and psychological information that we've collected through the Esprit study, which is extremely exciting. And so I think more of these type of studies are really needed for us to fully understand and appreciate the role of genetics, especially in late onset and chronic diseases. This whole area around why some people are affected by having a genetic change quite seriously with a disease, and you can actually find that same genetic change in other people that remain protected against the disease. And so there's a lot of complexity that goes into defining that, but it would appear that some people can hold genetic risk factors their whole life and not develop any symptoms related to that disease. And we're really, really interested in studying exactly these people. So why are some people protected despite carrying a significant genetic risk factor their whole life? Are there other factors within the genome which are potentially protecting them against that risk? And if they are, can we find those factors? And might those factors inform a therapy or a drug or a prevention strategy for other people who are affected? And this can even happen within a single family. So you can have a genetic change that is inherited across multiple family members, which in some of those family members results in early onset serious disease like heart attacks or cancer predispositions. Yet in other members of the family, you can have a grandmother who's carried that genetic change, maybe a susceptibility to breast cancer her whole life, which we know is very significantly increases your risk, but she remains completely unaffected. And in Esprit, because of the recruitment criteria to get into the study, where we have overrepresented these type of people, i.e. people of healthy elderly health status. And so we're finding all kinds of things in their genomes that would usually be associated with a really increased risk of disease, yet we know that they've made it to 70, 80, even 90 years old with no signs at all of that disease, which leads us to believe they may carry other protective factors which we'd be really interested in finding. And this plugs into a broader international initiative called the Resilience Project, which is trying to find unique, rare individuals who, despite all the odds of being at increased risk of disease, manage to remain healthy very late into life. So this is a really exciting area of research, and it's kind of turning genetics upside down on its head in a certain way, because traditionally we've been focused on people with genetic diseases and their families who appear at clinics at an early age with symptoms of a disease. And so we've been measuring their genes for many, many years, and it's kind of led to a sampling or ascertainment bias towards those groups of people. And now we're in Esprit, we've got the opposite end of the spectrum. So we've got people who are still healthy at the end of their life, who have remained healthy despite carrying these genetic risk factors. So traditionally we haven't been looking at these people in research. So it's turning up things that we were very unexpected to find, but have a huge potential to inform genetic research.